All right, so last week we had a bunch of FTEs, failure to extract, towards the end of the shooting. It was chapter 9. We were shooting that estate Buckshot. And when I sat down to clean the shotgun today, which is after the shooting, I noticed that the extractor is pinned. And the pin goes through the extractor pivot channel and fits in through the top there. And then they've hammered it to keep the pin in, to retain the pin. We see the same thing back here. Firing pin retention pin is hammered to keep it in place. And it looks kind of like a mess, actually. But that's the method they're using. So I went to oil the extractor, and the extractor just went flying out because it no longer has a pin. So I'm going to email Panzer and request a new bolt, man, because that shouldn't happen. Now, the interesting thing is, when you put this on the runner, right, when the shotgun is running, this moves back and forth. See that? And that is a clear channel for that pin to fall out of there while the shotgun's running. So you could be standing out in the wilderness, doing your shooting somewhere, in the desert, in the sand, whatever. And suddenly that pin falls out inside the shotgun, falls out into the ground somewhere. You're never going to get it back. So I am going to request a new bolt. I've taken some pictures. I'm going to request a new bolt. But in the meantime, I'm going to the hardware store. I'm going to get a stainless steel screw, and I'm going to fabricate a pin for this hole, and I'm going to clean the hole out really well, and I'm going to freaking JB weld this plug down here. It'll be a threaded screw. I'm going to jam some JB weld in there, clean it up really good, sand it, jam some JB weld in there, and call it done, because I want to shoot tomorrow, and I think that'll be enough to hold that pin in temporarily while I wait for a new bolt. So these are areas that you want to focus on, like how well have they hammered these pins in, like what's their method, what's their strategy for mashing that steel over to make sure those pins stay in place. This one looks like there is a reasonable amount of steel, enough anyway. But if you look at this, there really wasn't much overhanging that ledge there. So, maybe they need to look at doubling up their efforts here for hammering in their material there to keep the pins in. Right on. So off to the hardware store to find a proper screw for this hole. Okay, so on the last outing, just to recap, on the last outing we had 2 failures to fire and 5 failures to eject. And all of that, I think, is related to the fact that the freaking extractor retaining pin fell out of the gun. And, they mashed the metal down here to keep the pin in, which is very similar to what we see here. But it obviously did not hold. And I believe those failures to fire were probably related to the bolt not being in the ready position to fire, either because the pin was coming out or because the extractor was out of position. And I believe the 5 failures to eject were for the same reason. The extractor was not doing its job because it was not properly freaking anchored into the bolt. So went to the hardware store and I got these number 440 by 1 inch stainless steel screws, and they're almost a perfect fit. Not quite, but almost. Very, very close. Very close. Like just by a doll hair. So it just about wants to fit in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the files and the 12-volt drill to lathe this down so that it fits properly into this area. So we're going to lathe down the head so that it fits into this hole, and we're going to lathe down the shaft so that it goes all the way through. And you can see the 1 inch screw is plenty long enough with some extra on it. So we'll have to trim the end and do a bunch of other things to get it to fit in there right. What I want is I want it to be a pretty snug fit. And I'm going to roughen up the inside of this channel here. In here, I'm going to roughen this up. And we're going to put the screw in, right? And then I'm going to put some JB Weld in here. JB Quick, set time 6 minutes, cure time 4 to 6 hours. So this should allow me to shoot the gun by the afternoon tomorrow. But today, we're just going to do the lathing on this screw. The other thing that's going to be really important is making sure that this is all cleaned out, that the oil is removed from here. So I'm going to get set up to do that now. Okay, so we got some brake clean, which is pretty good solvent cleaner. We've got our extractor and our bolt, and we've got some of these extended wooden Q-tips. I would just buy a whole bunch of these on Amazon, man. These just keep coming in handy no matter what, whether you're cleaning your ears or cleaning something else. They work really well. So part of this is I'm glad that I've discovered this. I didn't discover this on the last shoot, probably because I wasn't looking right. You really want to pay attention to the best of my knowledge, areas to pay attention to are the extractor retaining pin and the firing pin retaining pin, because they just match this down to keep those in, and you never know how well that's gonna go. So I'm just gonna take the cotton off of here as best I can. Scrape as much of this cotton off of here as possible. Just makes a more, like, basically a Q-tip that's going to be more narrow. Okay, so we got our brake clean. It's pretty nasty stuff, so just, use it sparingly. And we're gonna just spin this down through here. Get this oil off of here. And I can see it protruding into the hole there. I just want to get all the freaking junk, most of the junk out of here before I start working with making the new pin, because I don't want to get a bunch of junk on the pin while we're machining it, and then there's the problem of having the glue not be sufficiently, there's no adherence with the glue because the epoxy, because there's grease and oil and everything on there. So just jam this in there, twist. So that's clean enough to just start doing the work. And before we glue everything, we will clean it up more. But I just want to get all the gross crap off of here before we start lathing the part. Okay, the screw. It's almost a perfect fit, man. It's almost perfect. Like, if I wanted to, I could almost just screw it in there. Just almost. So we're going to lathe these parts. And during the interim, don't lose this. That'll really ruin your day, because this is a very difficult part. A pin is easy to manufacture, but an extractor is not. So the first thing I'm going to do is mount this in the drill chuck, so it's nice and even. Tighten it up. And I'm just going to file this down. And this is just going to be a guess and check process. What I want is for this screw head to fit nicely into that hole. And so it needs to go down a lot more here. So it's actually pretty decently hard metal. And it's getting there. I'm going to bring this out a little bit more. So I'm using a different part of the file. This nice little freaking 12-volt lathe. There we go. Check it here real quick. Oh yeah, it's getting closer. See that? It's getting closer. And this is going to need to be flattened a little bit too. But what I'm hoping is that I can actually thread this in and have it be fairly tight in there, and maybe not rely on the glue so much. Oh yeah, it's getting nice. It's getting close now. So that'll probably work. Almost. Not quite. Oh yes. Nice. Okay, that fits in there with a little bit of play. That's good. There'll be some space for the glue. Now the trick is to take off just a little bit of the thread so I can get this in through the hole. And I want it to fit in through here too. Just a little bit of the thread, not too much, just a little bit. So we're going to use this file instead. Okay, so there's some backspace on the inside of the chuck that allows that head to sink in. See, it's right there. There's a little bit of backspace on there, which is kind of really quite lucky. So what I'm going to do, and let's just try that out. Visually, I can see that it's getting worn down a little bit. Try the extractor first. Not quite. Then we'll try the bolt. Not quite. Okay, so we got to take a decent amount off of there, a little bit more. All right, it's getting down there. So we do the outside portion first, then we flip it around, and we do the inside portion. Ah, eureka. Okay, so that's just enough, man. That's just enough. And then will it fit in up here? Yes. Yes. Okay, that's just enough. Any more, it'd be too loose. So then I'm going to mount this way. Nice and tight. And I want this to be like nearly perfectly fit. Oh yeah, you see that? Just about right. So what we're going to do is we'll use some paper to just smooth that out a little bit. I want the center shaft here to be just a little smooth. It's probably good enough. Okay, so we got our extractor and the screw fits. We've got our bolt. it looks like it may just be a little bit tight. Just a little bit tight, but I'm thinking that might be a good thing. That might be a good thing. So this might be like a freaking little bit of a lesson here. Panzer talks about their quality control process, and you know, that they've improved quality across Turkish shotguns. And see that? Man, that's nice. Okay. So I'm just going to give this a little bit of a turn and see if we can drive this in. Oh yeah. So it's just a little snug, which is exactly what you want, because it helps to keep the part in the gun. And this is just a temporary fix, you know? It's just a temporary fix until I get a new bolt in the mail. Maybe it'll last a long time, who knows? But you can see it's coming out at the top here, which is pretty sweet. And it's freaking tight. So I'm kind of liking that. So now the trick is getting it out of there, right? What we're going to do is just lock the chuck down on here as best as possible. There we go. So we got it out of there. So if I can get this in, and thread it in there, and then just cut it off and glue it, that'd be pretty dope. That'd be pretty freaking dope. So I think, you know, this is an iterative process, right? But I think that is probably the smartest thing to do, since it's already threading tight. I'll just thread it in there, cut it off, and maybe just put a dab of glue in there. It's kind of a one-way repair, man, you know? It's like once it's in there and glued up, that's going to be it. So this is the extractor spring and extractor head, spring head. And it goes in here like this. And the spring head is chamfered a little bit on this side. And then the extractor goes in like that. So you just push down the spring head, and that's how the extractor works. And then this goes inside the extractor. And you just work it in there a little bit. And you can see the screw through this hole here. So now Bravo. Did you see that? Bravo. Dude, that's solid. Dude, very little wobble. Freaking solid. So now I'm just going to screw this in. And it's tight, bro. That's freaking tight. I kind of like that. So now the trick is maybe just figuring out how to cut this off. I'm not quite sure. Hacksaw probably be the best bet. That might be the best bet. Let's see how many threads are on there. It's like 2 or 3 threads. Or the other thing is I could just take it down from up here. That's probably easier now that I think about it. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to back this out, clean it up for gluing. There we go. Just leave the extractor in there. And then we're going to clean this up for gluing. So this is the glue is going to go down in here. Not too much, we're just going to put a little bit of glue in there. But I want this to be like completely oil free. Here we go. Just make this completely oil free. And it's already roughed up with the file. Okay, just set that aside real quick, and then this is going to need to be cleaned out here. And my other concern is, will this head seat all the way down in there? Yeah, plenty of clearance there, bro. So that's good. That'll seat all the way down in there. Okay. We'll just do this whole process one more time. We want to shave off, tear off a bunch of this cotton here. And do this top side here. There we go. Nice. Solvent clean that pretty decently. It's pretty good. Get in this hole here. The cleanliness is important, man. It's freaking important. So we're gonna do that a couple more times. Temporary fix. I mean, it's a one-way fix. You know, once you got this installed, you're not really taking it out again, man. I mean, unless you heat it up to melt the epoxy, it ain't coming out afterwards. Okay. So we'll just let that dry. 6:00 p.m. We got some light. So we're gonna bust this out. And then we'll let it set overnight. This is our mixing tray. We just want this to be dry. And there's a little bit of fuzz on here still. Okay. Just touch this up a little bit just to make sure it's fairly dry. Yeah. It's got that clean squeak to it. Okay. JB Quick. Equal parts. This is kind of greasy already, huh? Yeah, this is greasy. A 6-minute working time, you know? We don't need much, just a little bit. Hardener and resin. It's about right. Just about right. Okay. Doesn't like eyeballing it. So that's about equal parts right there. Just about. And the thing about Quick is like not very cooperative with time. So you want to just mix it up. you think about it, man, this is a one-way trip for sure. Spin it in there. Not too deep. You know, not too deep. Just enough to get it in there. Come back to the other side here. I'm actually going to leave that free for a minute. We're going to take our screw, put it all the way through the system there. And we're going to thread it down most of the way. Okay. Now we're just going to gently thread it in so that it doesn't push all the glue out. There we go. And then we're going to take and we're just going to put this in there, man, you know, all around the threads. It's already starting to harden up a little bit. Man, you can clean this off later. Don't worry about all the goop. Just get it in there. Screw that in. Come on, baby, you can do it. Come on, you can do it. She flush? Not quite. She's not quite flush. Almost flush. Almost flush. Coming out the back end. Extractor's working just fine. Okay, let's scrape as much of this crap off here as possible. There we go. Just scrape that off. Still got a little bit of working time here. We'll be able to clean this up in the morning after it's set. Okay, I'm satisfied. That's good enough for now. Maybe just a little bit more here. So that's just a hair above the running surface there. And this is poking out quite a lot. But we're gonna take saw or file to it, and I think it'll be okay. And then we'll just clean it up really good. But the point is, it's tight, it's glued, it's tight, and the extractor's moving just fine. It's super, super snug. The tolerances are really good. All right. Let's just get a good look at this up here. There we go. So you can see, protrudes just a little bit, but I think I can file that down. Up here. This protrudes quite a lot, but we'll file that down too, one way or the other. Right on. She's snug, she's moving, and there's no glue around that. The glue is up here and down here. So that's it. Let's see what we can do in the morning to smooth this out. But for now, we'll just let it set. Rock on, man. That's what happens when your stupid Panzer extractor retaining pin falls out. And that's what happens when you're desperate. You got 50 rounds of buckshot you want to shoot the next day. That's what you do, baby. Tailgate repair. All right, so here we go. We've got the bolt here, and I ground down the top of that pin and ground down the bottom, oiled everything up. Now there's going to be a lot of force on this. When those shells go off, it's going to put a lot of kinetic energy in the front of this bolt, and the pin is tightly bound in there because, you know, I only ground the threads down just enough that it took a lot of force, probably like 30-40 pounds of force to get it screwed in. The extractor is lubed, so we'll just have to see if it stays in or not. I don't know, but like I said, I'm gonna have a new bolt on the way from Panzer, so that's all oiled. I oiled the entire gun, but what I reserved for this session is I'm gonna clean inside here, inside the gas chamber. I'm going to clean both of these items. Now, I think the FTEs last time weren't actually caused by the gas system. I think they were caused by the malfunctioning extractor. But we're going to put some ATF in here and scrub it up a little bit. And we're going to scrub this up a little bit. And we're going to reassemble the gun, and we're going to shoot. We got 50 rounds of estate, just like the last chapter. So got some ATF here on my finger, and I'm just going to wipe it around here. This is going to help loosen up any carbon. ATF is an extremely detergent heavy lubrication. I don't know if you've ever looked inside a transmission before, but Transmissions are fairly clean. If they have fresh ATF in them, the ATF keeps them clean. So I'm just going to smear it around in there. I'm going to let it sit for a while. Same thing with this. And there's not much carbon on here. Not much at all. But what's on here we'll just wipe off. All right. We'll just let that sit for a minute. So I don't know how well that repair is going to hold. Part of me thinks that it'll hold really well, but you know, the bolt experiences such violent forces that I'm not really sure how well that pin's going to stay in there, or if that JB Quick is going to break free. We're just going to have to see. But my recommendation for this pin next time is that they use a side mounted cotter pin to go in through here, that this extractor pin can have a hole in it and rotated, and then a side mounted cotter pin can be pushed in. And same thing with this side mounted cotter pin right here would be good, because this thing where they mash the steel to hold in the piece, you know, if it's done right, yeah, that makes sense. But from what I can see, this has been done pretty lazily, you know, and Panzer's trying to have a reputation for doing things right. You know, drilling a couple extra holes and providing a couple extra cotter pins is, you know, not that big a deal. Couple extra dollars on the cost of the shotgun. So, all right. So what we're gonna do here is we have our brush, and I'm just gonna brush in here. This is pretty easy, 12 gauge brush. It's the same thing as the barrel brush. Just brush this up a little bit. Doesn't need much. And then just gonna brush this off a little bit. And I can tell just from looking at it that the ATF loosens up the carbon real quick, real nicely. Just brush this off, and then we'll wipe these down. Wipe this down, get all the carbon off of here. And there's some residual on there, but it's good enough to function. And then just wipe this off. Wipe this out. So this would be the first cleaning of the gas chamber. 516 rounds. First cleaning since I've had the gun. And then we'll just put some oil on there. 5W30, 5W20, whatever it is. And we're just going to oil it up. That's good enough. We're going to oil the outside of this gas piston. Oil the inside. Doesn't need to be immaculate, man. Just needs to have the gross fouling removed and a little bit of lubrication added to it. So that's it. Just quick field strip, clean. Everything else in the gun's been clean. The mag tube, the operating spring, the entire trigger group, the lifter, just like I've done before. The bolt, the spring collar, the runners, everything's been lubed. And the spring, the mag spring, and the spring follower. So we're just gonna assemble everything, load up the estate, and get shooting. Right on. Okay, those are our stumps, shooting at a down angle. See everything in front of me. It's nice and safe to the best of my knowledge. And got 7 rounds in the shotgun. This hasn't been fired since the ejector was repaired. So let's see how she works. Here we go. So far, so good. Right on. Everything's clear. Let's load some more. Okay, round 2. Everything's clear. Right on. Okay, round 3. Just doing some stump blasting. So far, so good. All right. Just a little teeny tiny hang up on the lifter there. Just a little bit, just a hair. Okay. Otherwise, she's functioning. All right, round 4. Here we go. All clear. Let's do round 5. All right, state, round 5. Here we go. All right. Same thing. Just a real minor, super minor, super minor lifter hang up right there. Just real minor. Interesting. All right, here we go. All right, round 6. Let's do it. All right, 2 minor lifter hang-ups. Everything else, so far, so good. 7 straight. All clear. Let's do another one. All right. Round 7. Here we go. So weak. Okay, we got 2 more in the pocket. This will be the last 2 of the day. Sweet. I consider that a success. A couple real, really hair, minor hair catches on the lifter. Maybe that means that needs to be shaved down a little bit. So the shells are coming out at about 2:30, 3 o'clock, and they're about 6, 7 feet away. So they're flying pretty good. So what we'll do is we'll just disassemble and take a look at that bolt, because I'm interested to see how well that extractor pin held up. Right on. Okay. So that's kind of interesting about the lifter. I'm kind of wondering if maybe, possibly, I've cut just a few too many coils off of my spring, my mag spring. Not quite sure yet. Could be lifter spring, could be mag spring. One thing I do know is that the entire trigger group is really well oiled. It's been oiled, cleaned, lubed. So the lifter's moving very freely. All right. Moment of truth. Oh yeah. Freaking looks great. So it's not coming out whatsoever. It's nice and flush. Doesn't appear to have moved at all. That surface is nice and flush. So for sure, no failures to fire today. You know, a lot of those FTEs could have had to do with, well, it could have had to do with a gummed up gas system. But if my extractor pin was having problems, and if it's been having problems since the beginning, maybe the extractor wasn't working right. The pin that's in there now is really nicely tall. It's got nice tolerances. It fits inside the extractor really snugly. So, you know, maybe that repair is actually an improvement on the pin that was in there before. So that's pretty good. There's still a little bit of lip on this. Still taking a little bit of wear, the locking block up here. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that. But so far, gun's still working. You know, all we had was two or three lifter errors today. So what I'm thinking is, I mean, because this time around, those shells were just barely caught on the edge here. It wasn't like, you know, a quarter inch up. It was just barely on the edge. So, you know, what I'm thinking is maybe possibly a shave on this. Not quite sure yet. But what I do want to do is just pop this out real quick here. Thinking about rubbing down this pin a little bit, because it's just really tight, and I'd like to be able to pop it out a little bit easier than it goes out. All right, so let me get a shell too. So the way this was, just barely caught. Right on the lower edge like that. Just barely. So maybe there needs to be another slight modification there. Just a little bit. Obviously, The shell is coming, I mean, the shell's coming out at a pretty consistent angle from the magazine. So I'm not really questioning the magazine. Obviously, the freaking lifter is not returning all the way, you know? For one reason or the other. See, it's just kind of like not a lot of spring tension at that lowest position there. So, and I'm not too sure I want to shave down this lifter anymore, man. I need to do some research on that. But this is the spring housing and the spring pin for the lifter. And it's all oiled up nicely, man. I mean, I spent a lot of time oiling this up and cycling it. So, and maybe, possibly, I might want to take off a little bit of this edge here, just a hair. This edge, because this lifter stops on this tube. So maybe. I mean, maybe not. I'm not quite sure about that, but could possibly shave this down. I could also, this spring is long. I could put a little spacer at the bottom of this spring tube just to make a little bit more tension, because you can see it doesn't actually compress the spring very much. During its total travel, it only compresses the spring like 3/16 or a quarter. 3/16 maybe, like right there. See that? So I could add some more tension to the spring by packing the bottom of this with like a disc, like a 1/16 of an inch disc. Just put a disc at the bottom of there, and that'll give it more tension, because there's a lot of space in here. There's a lot of spring space in here. So yeah, anyway, that's about it. I'll get back to you. I'm going to review the footage, and I'll get back to you with final thoughts. All right. Let's see if I can do this right, man. Really not into filming myself, but this is the spot where I took my last deer, right here in this meadow. And right back there through those trees is the mountain. I love that mountain. A young buck, which is all I wanted. I didn't want anything more, but it was a young buck right up there on that ridge. And you know, the way I hunt is I spend so much time out in the wilderness, that, you know, out here in the forest, that I watch the animals all the time. I know where they're coming through, and if you know them well, if you love your animal, it's not difficult to hunt them. But just afternoon hunt, just sitting right up there. I was just sitting right up there. I hiked around. It was like 15 minutes before sunset, and I just sat down with my AR in my lap, and I know that they're traveling from back there, and they're coming across and going through up there. And I was just enjoying the day. I wasn't like greedy for taking an animal, but it was time. I was just enjoying the day, sitting there, and I looked up, looked right over here, and there's a buck coming through, just coming through here. And I wasn't even like hiding. I was just sitting on this fallen log, and this freaking buck was coming at me from about 100 yards away, and he walked right towards me. And the thing is, that's downwind, so he's just having a good time. He's walked right towards me, came up right towards me. He's looking right at me, and he didn't see me, didn't smell me, and he turned, because there was a number of fallen logs in front of us and some small trees. He turned left and he went down and went around all those obstructions, and I just, just followed him with my scope. And right at the point where he was gonna start to smell me, he stopped and he looked around, and I had all the time in the world, and I put a small round Barnes 70 grain TSX right behind his shoulder, man, right through his boiler area, man. And he didn't flinch, he didn't move. He just stood there for a minute, and then he walked around in a circle and laid down. Like it was a great, just a profoundly great, clean hunt, very clean kill. And harvested the meat, and it was perfect. It was just perfect. So if you know what you're doing, and you know your animal, and you're using the right round, and you take the right shot, you're not in a hurry, you know exactly where you want to put the shot, you know exactly what angle you want the animal to be at. If you want it to be a good hunt, then it'll be, you do it right, then it'll be a good hunt. And I'm not the kind of person to take a bad shot, or take a shot if it's no good, or I'm not greedy for the kill like that. What matters to me is that everything goes just right. And if there's something not right about it, then I just appreciate the animal and enjoy the day and let the animal go off on his way. And there's plenty of times when I see if I'm hunting and I see an animal, there's plenty of times where I know right off the bat there's no shot, it's not going to happen. So I just take one deer a year, and it was a mule deer. And so this is kind of a special spot because everything went well here, and it was a great memory and a very humane hunting event. So just to recap the shotgun experience today, man, I think it went really well. I had some things on my mind not related to shooting, and so I wasn't perfectly entirely excited about the whole thing, but it went really well. 2 lifter errors, and no FTFs, no FTEs. But so 48 out of 50 rounds. So, and the lifter errors, man, I mean, we already know what's going on with that. That lifter, the timing on the lifter is not fast enough. The mag spring works great. The mag spring is pushing those shells out, obviously, because that's why there's an impact, because the shell is coming out fast and the lifter is not returned to zero. So the timing on the lifter is not right, and for me it's not about the position of the lifter. Like the lifter has full travel. It's the timing of the travel that's not right. So I'm gonna pull the lifter spring on the next event, and I'm gonna put a spacer underneath the lifter spring to make the spring a little bit more tense in the spring shaft. And I we'll just see how that works. But those end-on lifter errors, man, that's just ridiculous, And I'm thinking it's got to be a spring issue. So This is where they come through. See that hole right there? They come through here and they walk all the way across this meadow. And so yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I mean, you know, it doesn't make any sense for me to shave the lifter down anymore. It's already shaved down plenty. It seems to work most of the time. I think, you know, the shotgun's moving. There's a lot of kinetic energy in the system. And so every once in a while, that lifter just doesn't go to zero. Doesn't go to zero. That shell's coming out. Boom, it hits it. It hits it because it's in the way. The lifter is in the way. So we're going to increase the spring tension on the next go around. And I kind of want to shoot some cheap target loads on the next round. I should probably shoot the Buckshot, but the Buckshot's working. Those two lifter errors we had today, it's not related to the Buckshot. You know, those shells are moving just fine in the magazine. They're moving just fine through the breech. They're extracting well. They're loading well. They're extracting well. So I like that estate officially, right? If the extractor had worked last time, which it wasn't because the pin was missing, if the extractor had worked last time, I don't think we would have had those 2 failure to fires or those 5 failures to extract. So the estate, to the best of my knowledge, is good load. It's good, affordable, double-aught buck. That's, you know, I like it. It's tested. So on the next go around, I'm gonna buy a box of cheap Winchester low brass target loads, like 1145. I think it's like 1145 or 1200 feet per second. And we're gonna increase the spring tension on the lifter. And we're just gonna shoot a butt ton of target loads. So today was 50 rounds on top of the 516 we've already shot. So it's 500 and, is that right? No. We're already at 566. 50 rounds on top of the 516 was last week. So today is an additional 50 rounds on top of that. So we're over 600 rounds. I'll just post it on the screen. That's great. What else? The shotgun is not broken. It's lost some pin, you know, it lost a pin. You know, I had to Loctite the screw on the barrel nut. I had to fix the pin on the extractor, but none of the main components are broken. The only thing that's kind of worrisome is the locking block on the bolt is just, that metal seems to be soft, because every time I shoot, I get a little bit more of an edge on the top of there. That edge just kind of grows. I've already shaved it off once. What that means is that eventually that locking block is going to get to a point where it's not properly locking the bolt closed. And we'll probably see some failures to fire at a certain point. So I don't really like that. That metal should be harder. That locking block metal should be harder, you know. I should be able to shoot, you know, a couple thousand rounds at least without seeing any like problems with the locking block. And I'm kind of suspecting that it's going to wear down enough eventually that, you know, I'm going to see some problems there. So that's unfortunate. That metal should just be harder. So that's about it. Successful shoot. You know, we're having to make adjustments and make repairs, and you know, do things with this $260 semi-auto shotgun that is, you know, basically randomly assembled Turkish parts. No, I'm not quite in agreement with Panzer that they have better QC on their shotguns, because, you know, you get a Black Aces shotgun, or you get a, you know, there's all sorts of different kinds of shotguns out there that have a lot of the similar problems. So maybe Panzer's listening. I doubt it. But the wear on the locking block, the loss of the extractor pin, the near loss of the detent screw for the barrel nut, the lifter being too long. The lifters clearly was too long initially. It was kind of getting in the way during loading and all sorts of stuff like that. The lack of tension on the lifter spring, the off-spec magazine spring. I mean, all of these issues are adding up to a pretty long list. So, you know, if they're going to say, oh yeah, we got good QC on our shotguns, you know, buy our stuff. I want to be able to buy a shotgun from Panzer and know that it's going to work for 500 rounds without any issues. So we had, like, I don't know, a pretty decent list, like a list of 5 different issues so far with the shotgun. Nothing's broken, but it doesn't exactly meet what they're promising about their shotguns. What the other thing that'll be interesting is I'm gonna request a new bolt for free, because the failure on the extractor pin that's just unacceptable. That's a good word to use. It's unacceptable. So I got photographs of it, and I'm gonna ask them to send me a bolt. And I don't know if the new bolt's gonna be any better than the old bolt, but we're gonna continue to use the old bolt, because now I've got confidence in the extractor pin. So anyway, that's all for now. This is a long play video because there's repairs and shooting and talking and all sorts of stuff like this. So I'm not, you know, this is low production quality. I'm just making the video for those of you who find it useful. So my apologies for the long play on the video, but that's the whole idea, is we're getting into this shotgun in very much detail. And that's what I think other Panzer owners deserve, is a really good understanding as to what they got and how it works, you know. And so that's it. This is the Owl, and I hope you have a good week, and work hard, play hard, take care of your families, remember your freedom, and don't bend to tyrants. This is the Owl, signing off.